Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now let's take you through the newspapers this morning, share with you the big stories making headlines across Nigeria today. We are, of course, going to be kicking off on the leadership newspapers, I believe, and let's see what we can quickly find over there. Some of them, of course, we've already spoken about. It says their relief as labor leaders suspend indefinite strike. Cite intervention by National Security Advisor to monitor situation. Students lament grounding of varsities and suspension of exams. We can also find here visa revocation, why we denied 177 Nigerians entry. That's from Saudi Arabia. Appeal court affirms someone lose re-election. 2 children die. 1,113 houses razed in Borno IDP's camp. That's a really pathetic story, really sad. SEC to reduce 190 billion naira unclaimed dividends with new portal. And these are the big ones. Okay, well, top of the screen, you have entrenched democracy in Nigeria, Tinubu tells editors. 30,000 naira minimum wage, no longer acceptable, says Abdulsalami Abubakar. All right, let's bring in this morning Mr. Bode Gbadebo. He's the online editor for the leadership newspapers. And he'll be joining us to, of course, analyze these stories. The first one, of course, is going to be the story on the labor strike, NLC strike that has been suspended. What are your quick thoughts, on how this played out?
Well, I think it's a big relief as captured by our newspaper this morning. Tension were high already because a lot of things have been affected. The social sector, the education sector, the health sector, even the transportation sector, almost everything that has to do with the economy had been affected before last night. But thank God, the labor leaders saw reason to actually call off the strike after a meeting with the National Security Advisor, whom I also believe realized the national security implication of the indefinite labor strike and quickly moved in to actually douse the tension. Well, it's like putting the cart before the horse, because the labor movement gave about 5 or 6 days ultimatum. The government did not take them serious until Tuesday midnight when they commenced the strike. So for me, it was like daring them or treating the labor movement with contempt. It's not their fault, maybe because a lot of things have happened to labor movement in Nigeria. Hence, people do no longer take them as serious. This is a clear departure from what we used to have in the 90s, in the days of the late comrade Pascal Bafia, when he was leading the NLC. But thank God, the end has come and workers can now resume their work, especially students who were writing exam and they were asked to stop the examination because ASU also joined the strike. Now we can heave a sigh of relief in almost every sector. So it's a welcome development.
There's the arguments about whether the strike was necessary in the first place. Mostly because the NLC has had a lot of back-to-back, calls for protest or strike that never go anywhere. So was this one necessary? Do you think that, the attack on the NLC president was enough, to shut down the country for, indefinitely until, they met these demands? And look at the list of demands. None of the demands were even centered around, fixing or making a better life for Nigerians.
Yeah, I think there was a misconception of the whole idea of the indefinite strike. A lot of people erroneously believed that it was about the brutalization of the NLC president, Comrade Joe Ajaero. Well, the labor movement came out to say, well, it wasn't about the personality or the person of Joe Ajaero. The indefinite strike was about, sitting issues in the labor-government relations and also pending, implementation of pending agreements and MOU between governments and the labor movement. Even though the brutalization of the NLC president compounded the issue, and all Nigerians should be concerned about that. That's not civilized. That's in this age, a labor leader went to a part of the country to champion the cause of its members. The Imo State chapter of the Nigerian Labour Congress invited him to come, and in solidarity, he was there. Incidentally, he happened to come from that state, part of the country, to also help, protest their own maltreatment by the Hope Uzodinma government in Imo State. And in broad daylight, in presence of security people, he was attacked, brutalized, to the extent that we had even security men, government appointees were the one responsible for this.
The challenge here, Mr. Gbadebo, what I think the disconnect here with a lot of people is seeing that this was enough justification to shut the whole country down. Because there's, arguments that he could have sued. He could approach the court and sue those persons individually, those who attacked him, in Imo State. But it's not enough to shut the whole country down if you're not fighting for the Nigerian citizens. If the NLC protest or strike is not in the interest of the Nigerian citizens in totality. Do you see where there's, a disconnect here? Because so it means that even with what Nigerians are currently dealing with, insane cost of living, inflation at its highest that it has ever been, lack of security, educational, crisis and everything. It means the NLC didn't think that it should maybe go on strike for any of all those reasons until this leader was attacked.
For me, I want to take the words of the NLC because they came out to say, well, it wasn't about Joe Ajaero as a person, but the attack on him compounded the issue. I remember the popular saying that an injustice to one anywhere is an injustice to all. Well, everywhere. It can be Mr. Ajaero today, it could be one journalist tomorrow, it could be one medical doctor elsewhere. I remember before now, even medical doctors were victims of attack by relatives of patients in their hospital, and NMA had cause to also call medical workers to go on protest because of maltreatment of medical workers. But be as it may, I think that is the past tense now.
In other words,
attack on Ajaero as a person is not a justification.
In other words, when they came for the trade unionists, I did not speak up for them because I was not one of them. When they came for the Jews, I did not speak up because I was not one of them. When they came for me, there was no one to speak up for me. However, Nigerians will not, a number of Nigerians will still not agree that this fight was for the Nigerians because it's been a really difficult time. It's been a really difficult time to adjust to the cost of living. We just had in the news today, on the front pages of the paper, the inflation has soared, and unfortunately, we're not seeing what is being done. Every month, we're seeing the numbers are increasing. 28.77, if I'm correct. 23.7. No, it has to be more than 23. Because in October, it was more than 23. I'm going to confirm the numbers. But the numbers are not looking...
27.3.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. 27.3. The numbers are not looking good. And, all of a sudden, there's now an announcement of a strike, a few days to elections, particularly in the Imo State, not in other parts of the country at first.
I don't know if we're forgetting, Oliver, I really apologize. Are we forgetting that when petrol price, increased, it took Nigerians to a cost of living that they had never experienced before?
From 180
The NLC couldn't maintain that strike for up to, 2 hours. Or that
they called it off very quickly, yes.
And this is the same NLC that claims to be fighting for the Nigerian people. Until today, there's still been no respite. There's been nothing that has changed with regards how Nigerians are dealing and coping with the new realities of the Nigerian state. But when their leader was attacked by people that we don't even know.
We would say we do not applaud, we do not approve of, and of course, investigation should be carried out. Arrests made and prosecutions should be
What I'm pointing out is when they came for the Jews and when they came for the...
I say, no, that would be
NLC doesn't even fight for the Nigerian people, and that's what a lot of people would argue, that they don't even fight for the Nigerian people. So it's not a matter of when they came for the native doctors, you didn't come out for me. When they came for the Jews, you didn't come out for me. They are not even fighting for the Nigerian people from what it looks like.
And when you say that, it's a thing of the past now because the strike has been called off, I'm like, well, until the next strike is announced on the next market day and called off 2 hours after. Let's move away from the leadership newspaper to our next paper this morning. And on the front page of Business Day newspaper, bread, fish prices stoke inflation to 18-year high. This is exactly what we've just talked about. These are conversations that we want to see what the next steps are. Oil firms pay less penalty for gas flared. EP Saudi saga sparks calls for equal treatment. We also have here consumer goods firms stay afloat as earnings slump. it's not looking good, Mr. Gbadebo. You're seeing the numbers. The numbers are terrible. Bread, fish prices stoke inflation to 18-year high. There's an increase in food inflation. And we're seeing the numbers being reflected in the big purchases and the small purchases. It is a common man, the average Nigerian, and those are the lower end of the earning capacity that are feeling the punch. It would be argued that the politicians, the members of the National Assembly, no, they're not feeling it as intensely. There are people who don't know where their next meal will come from, and it looks like it keeps getting worse, even as we come to the end of the year, the festive season. So I'd like to find out what your thoughts are. What really can we do about it? When we're having conversations about people buying vehicles and talking about how important these vehicles are, how exactly can we get out of this? And how do we get our leaders to understand the intensity of what Nigerians are going through and prioritize looking for how to beat down the inflation rates so that Nigerians can breathe?
All right. I will speak as a journalist, not as an economist, but I can confidently tell you that tackling inflation is not a rocket science. We've had people speaking about it, experts, both on the local scene and the international scene. Now, what's our problem in Nigeria? The problems are very, very simple. They're not far-fetched. We have a naira that is depreciating every day. Of course, there must be inflation. We have inadequate foreign exchange. There must be inflation. So, no, purchasing power to buy what we need, there must be inflation. So what do we do? And again, sorry, there is a teething issue of insecurity. So what do we do? The government must put in place a security architecture that is functional, that is workable to tackle insecurity, so that farmers in the agrarian communities of Nigeria can conveniently go to farm, cultivate enough food for their own subsistence and probably exportation, so that Nigerians can make more foreign earnings, foreign exchange. We have to also invest in productive activities to make more money. We have to reduce our importation. If we can consume what we produce and reduce our importation, the meager foreign exchange we have will be conserved. We will not spend it on importation of things or luxury things that are not important. By so doing, we can, in my own layman's understanding, and ask people around, we can actually tackle inflation. But look at what we have today. The figure in the previous month has gone up to 27.3 in the current month, according to data released by the National Bureau of Statistics. So by next month in December, probably, God forbid, it will also be higher. So this is not good for the economy. And what's even more perplexing is the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, since assuming power on May 29, 2023, had made several far-reaching policy statements saying he will do this, he will do that, he will sponsor so amount of billion of naira in the agricultural sector, in the production sector, and the rest of them. What are the mechanisms put in place to track this money? Have the money been released? What have we achieved with the money? So we are not asking the right questions. And that is why we are where we are today. So God help us that a lot of things will change with Tinubu, because we shouldn't be talking about the immediate past government again, the Buhari government. We shouldn't be talking about them, because that government dedicated billions of naira to handouts. They were used as means of political patronage only. But in this case, I hope President Tinubu will think out of the box and do the right thing to actually tackle. And remember, he has people who are reputed to have technical know-how in economy.
Yeah,
to help him,
I believe
without all these challenges.
Even
the CBN governor.
Yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that the previous administration had same.
The CBN governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, and other people who are even working behind the scene we don't know, who were reputed to have helped him to actually govern Lagos between 1999 and 2007. So we want to see the impact of the knowledge of these people within the shortest time possible. We know we Nigerians, we don't believe in anybody's past glory. What we want to see is what is happening in the present. The moment the person cannot deliver, we begin to complain. It's like in the game of football. If somebody has been scoring for you every day for 100 days, on the 101st day, if he cannot score again, that player becomes useless that day. So that's the Nigerian mentality.
But the thing is, you know, we might have these persons, you know, just like the previous administration had its economic management team that had, you know, pretty sound, you know, names on that team. Didn't achieve anything with it. You know, it almost felt like they, well, let me not go there. But the point is they didn't achieve much with it, with those people on that team. So it's not just the names on the team. It's not the brilliance of the people on the team. It is about the country that actually knows that it wants to work. And as the current administration showed, that it understands where Nigeria is and what must be done? I don't think so. With the appointment of 48 ministers, with the appointment of different SAs and SSAs here and there, that would, of course, continue to earn from the government. It doesn't seem so. With the buying of 1.5 billion naira cars for the First Lady's office, with National Assembly, you know, budgeting billions of naira to buy cars for themselves, with 3 and 4 and 5 billion being budgeted here and there to renovate houses for the Vice President and for the President. That's not a government that shows that it understands what's at stake and what must be done, if we're being honest. But, I mean, what can we do as Nigerians? We'll say, you know, by God's grace, isn't that it? And we wish the government well, we hope that it succeeds, as if it's my wishes that will make the government succeed. It's not my wishes. Even if I wish the government bad, a serious government would work, regardless of how I wish. But let's go to the Punch newspapers and see what we can find there. It says there, Labour suspend strike. OPS stakeholders tackle NLC and TUC. It also says here, strike over Gero assault, abuse of power, says LCCI. Maritime sector loses 20 billion naira. Labour threatens to resume strike, insists on demand, says suspension temporary. Lagos, Kogi, Rivers orders. Lagos, Kogi and Rivers lead as inflation hits 27.33%. 177 Nigerians deported, violated Saudi Arabia visa rule, says the embassy. And final story here, Labour Party welcomes Atiku's merger proposal, NNPP gives conditions. We can also find here the Navy arresting 4 stowaways aboard Dubai vessel. Quickly, we have just about 2 minutes left, so quickly, I want you to react to the Labour Party welcoming Atiku's merger proposal. I haven't read in entirety what that story says or who the report is coming from, but what are your thoughts on the idea of a merger between, you know, Atiku Abubakar's, you know, PDP and the many parties?
That's another way of putting the cart before the horse. There should be, this should have been a discussion before the 2023 general election.
Nobody was interested in that then. Everybody wanted
exactly. Well, probably is a futuristic thing. They were now, you know, concerned about how to restore power from Tinubu in 2027, in the next 4 years. But you said we have 2 minutes, so let me quickly say something. Nigerians actually don't think this way. So they will believe this is about Atiku, this is about Obi. Nigerians will always go for their mundane sentiments in picking leaders. And that's why we are where we are today. You know, you say something about a government that is not sensitive, buying cars, renovating houses, in the midst of these poverty, suffering, and the rest of them in the land. And I want to tell you that we should blame ourselves, because we didn't vote these people based on manifesto. We voted them based on sentiment of our tribe, sentiment of our region, sentiment of our religion. So this is the result.
Very true.
And the second, yes, that's one. So the talking about the Punch list story, the second part of the headline, talking about the organized private sector, the OPS and stakeholders blaming, tackling NLC and TUC. I also want to say it's high time the organized labor, the TUC and NLC also think out of the box.
All right, Mr. Gbadebo, we unfortunately have to interject at this point because we've run out of time for the newspaper reviews. But yes, we hope that they can think out of the box and the incessant strikes.
To change their strategy.
Exactly. That's a very important angle to look at. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you around.
My pleasure.